if you have been following what sometimes I say what I'm doing outside of YouTube on the channel. I'm in Florida right now with the tennis team. It's very warm here. Well, comparatively to Michigan. Team's great. We're not doing so hard on matches, but we ate Golden Corral for lunch today, and it's a terrible idea, but it's really delicious. Anyway, I'm doing article aftermath 17 of Not So Under the Radar Noble Knights Revisited. This is the second time that I've done Noble Knights, and it's also the second most comments I've ever got. The first being the first Noble Knight deck. I'm not surprised that Noble Knights generate a lot of comments. I don't know why I'm not surprised. I think because it's a TCG exclusive deck. I guess OCG has Madrots and Gawain now, but they don't have. I don't know if they have Dristan yet. They're missing 3 or 4 cards, including Excalibur and the rank Artorias 3.0. I don't know these names. This generated a lot of negative feedback, which I'm not too surprised about as well, just because people tend to be angry. First thing I noted is when I made a Bujin deck, I did not include Royal Decree, and I got a lot of comments like, "This is stupid. Why aren't you playing Royal Decree?" And then I played Noble Knights with Decree, and the responses was, "This is stupid. Why are you playing Royal Decree?" That's how I imagine everyone in the internet talks. I disagree with the first commenter where it said 3 Royal Decree main deck syndrome is ruins this deck. That's I don't really understand what you're getting at that. I think what they were trying to say is once they see your opponent has Royal Decree, they know that remaining traps or face down cards, if any, will not be anything to really hinder your strategy. It max it maybe a Book of Moon. I happen to include one warning in here. So that's your plays are typically going to be uninhibited as much as Royal Decree shuts down your opponent. It means you can't run traps. That doesn't really. I don't think that really ruins anything. Game one, when spell and trap destruction. Now with the increase of Dust Tornado, it's. I mean, that's a trap that's still chainable. With the increase of some things, Royal Decree is more prone to destruction. But if you don't have an out to Royal Decree, can't say this enough times. That's going to be very, very detrimental. And again, um, with Royal Decree face up, if your opponent is trying to get rid of your boss monster, well, now they have to choose between Excalibur or Destiny if you're trying to, destroy your monster, or Kaiser Coliseum so they can actually make a play, or now Royal Decree. I mean, it doesn't mean that, like, I think this person is very confused. That Defin's like, oh, you have Royal Decree where your opponent's just going to have MST and it's just going to be an easy out. That's a pretty ignorant statement to say, oh, I shouldn't run this card because my opponent runs MST. And the Queen of being after. Eventually, towards the end of the argument, he just started to say that Decree wasn't viable. When he started out by being very blatant about how it was just ruining everything, talk about a turnaround. The next commenter that made a pretty stupid comment was he had a huge beef with what I said that like your Artorias 3.0 equipped with Gwen, Excalibur, and Destiny is going to be virtually indestructible. It's like, yeah, that actually is virtually indestructible. And this guy made a point. It's like, oh, your opponent could just big eye it. And I'm like, well, yeah, that means you have to have means to make a big eye and make an and have an out to Excalibur. And if it's anywhere in the mid game where your Artorias 2.0 and 3.0 has probably destroyed a good portion of their spell and traps, I mean, do you really think that you're just gonna have a plethora of options in your hand like against? I mean, sure, with rank 4 stuff, Exiton's always an option, and like there are things like Big Eye, but Big Eye or Silent Honor Arc. It's just you're not always going to have like the easiest out to. I mean, you just have to have an out, and like later in the game, you may just not have outs. The same thing with. I mean, I've been locked out by Royal Decree before, where it's like I have outs to. You have outs to the monster, but there may be one thing holding you back. Like you may have a way to target or destroy the Noble Knight card, like Artorias, but then you don't have an out to the Excalibur. And so it's kind of ignorant to say, oh, your opponent's just always going to have an out. Because that's very not true. I mean, there have been plenty of times where, like, it's the same with Kaiser Coliseum. If you've ever lost a Kaiser Coliseum, then you know exactly what I mean. It's like, oh, I can make a play, but you're locked out by Kaiser Coliseum. And that's a very similar statement here, where it's like, sure, if you have an out, that's great. But when you have a monster that can't be destroyed, can't be targeted, has huge attack, and any monster that runs into it's just going to die automatically. Like I mean, yeah, you have to have multiple outs probably to deal with that threat. So, um, Gwyn is not a must to do. If you ever played Noble Knights, then you know that it's not a must. There are some instances where if you don't have any other Noble Arms cards and you want to, if you want to make two of your monsters rank 5, or if you want to make one of your cards, if you want to make multiple things indestructible, but it's like, I don't know what you're doing. If you're just running around with like a Madrot and a Boris, both equipped with Gwyn, and not doing anything beyond that, then I don't know what you're doing with your life. And can't the effect of Gwyn only be used once per turn? Hold on. I may edit this part out, but... Yeah, it can only be used once per turn, so I don't... Ooh, wow, interesting. That really kind of only helps my argument. I didn't even know about that when I was claiming that one would be more beneficial, but that's fine. So, one person asked, why not Trapstone over Royal Decree? And the fact that he said that besides the fact that Trapstone is only for one turn, that's, in my opinion, and from my experience playing Noble Knights, it hasn't been that much. Noble Knights, at the very beginning of the game, you're kind of in a bad position because you have to. I didn't include guard cards, but a lot of people do. You have to play some of your search cards. Excuse me. You have to play some of your search cards to try and thin your deck and get to your main combos like Madrot and Gawain and things like that. And then right after the beginning of the game, you're going to have a very strong game because you'll probably have multiple cards up on your opponent and you'll have a big monster that destroys spells and then eventually traps. Later in the game, things are going to be a little more rough for you because you haven't won Noble Knights, I don't think, drag out games too well. So I think Royal Decree helps a lot because for multiple setup turns, it can be very detrimental to your opponent, where Trapstone only stops your opponent for one turn. What if you need 2 turns to set up? Or you really want to blow up lots of things with Artorias 2.0 over multiple turns? I'm not necessarily saying the Royal Decree is the end-all, be-all, and you should always play it over Trapstone, but it was just my slight preference for this to play it over Trapstone. So, all right, thanks for watching Article Aftermath number 17. I'm going to go in a hot tub.